So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio, and today is Wednesday, September the 20th, 2023. And our calling number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you in the queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And when Michael gets in, the first thing we have an email that actually came in over the weekend, and the last couple of days the show's been either technical problems or something. Anyway, we couldn't address her question. So we're going to do that first off, and then hopefully Julia is feeling better. She was a little under yesterday, and so hopefully she's feeling better and can call in, and we'll finish the worksheet that she was working on the other day with Michael. And like I said yesterday, it was kind of comical in a way. I know the people that were experiencing didn't think it was funny, but there were at least there were 9 people that were in the StillPoint Breathing on Saturday, Sunday. 2 of them that I've heard from anyway were in healing crisis by yesterday. So we spent yesterday talking quite a bit about what a healing crisis looks like, and when the vitality gets up, and everybody's vitality was up during the breath workshop. And when that happens, you are vital enough for the next layer of whatever to come forward. And so that was actually what was happening. And as I continued speaking with the first gentleman who had, I talked to him and worked with him, and he was getting ready to go to the doctor. I haven't heard the results of that, whether he ended up going, but he had said, "Oh, we're not going to be able to do a whole session today because I feel terrible." And by the time that we finished talking, we went a full hour, and he goes, "Oh, my throat feels better." So it was, just proof that it was a healing crisis, and that he didn't need to run and get on a bunch of drugs, which I'm sure the doctor would have tried to have done. And so hopefully, like I said, Julia will call in and we'll finish her worksheet. But I'm going to first say welcome, Michael, and then I'll read the email.
Let's go for that email, sweetie.
All right. So she didn't go into great detail of what was going on. She just said, I'm wondering if in your experience it's beneficial or harmful to fill in details of a traumatic event when going through the forgiveness worksheet. I blocked a big portion of the circumstances around what was most likely my first ever panic attack when I was 12 years old. I considered asking my sister, who was with me at the time and is 4 years older, to see what she remembers about that night. This event keeps popping into my head after canceling my goal to be left alone. When inviting Rupitakucha in, I decided to do worksheets on the parts that I could remember, but there isn't a whole lot there. Thank you for all you do and you offer. And so I wrote back to her and told her that we would address it on Monday's show, which we didn't end up doing. But I said, and Michael will give you more information. But he said that the more information that you have, the better you can address the issue. So, yes, go ahead and ask your sister. If she has nothing to offer, then just go with what comes up. As you do worksheets, more and more may pop. Write notes on anything that you think about for later worksheets. From personal experience, and I said, I don't need to know, but it sounds like possibly there was some abuse or sexual abuse or something along those lines. And I know personally that I blocked a lot so as not to, quote unquote, feel again. Whenever the memories are trying to come to conscious awareness, then you must be, if those memories are coming to conscious awareness, you must be vital enough to finally face it. You survive the actual event, you will survive the memory, holding the space. And then I suggested a mind shifter. I said, give me 2 numbers. And she gave me her numbers, and her mind shifter was absolutely perfect. And I don't have the part of the email where I sent her her mind shifter. Hold on one second. It was 12-3, and that is here it is, section 12, number 3, and this is on healing blame. And it was, sweetness pervades my body when I think of those who have hurt me. And so she wrote back and she said that she had been listening to the last couple of days' shows and that it was very powerful listening to the topics that were covered. So, Michael, if you want to address that a little further.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank Julia for what she opened up the other day, the conversation and the principles and just, the questions. I've said it before, and it's been a while since I said it, and I love what Einstein relayed about questions. He said he was given a challenge. Someone said to him, if you were given a problem and you had 1 hour to solve it, the question that was asked, you had 1 hour to solve it, what would you do? He said, I'd spend 55 minutes determining exactly what questions needed to be asked. And then I'd solve the problem. And the questions that people ask, and I certainly appreciate Doug's interaction yesterday. Doug's really, digging in, ferreting out, gnawing on the truth principles. And so sharing those questions opens a space where I get to engage in questions that I never would have asked personally. So thank you for those directions and those questions. So a couple of things. I would follow Yeshua's advice on that issue. And what was said was, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. The heart, in Aramaic, is a code word for the unconscious, or at least the word that the Greeks translated. It's a code word for the unconscious. Take care of what's in your unconscious, because that's where the power lies. When we start pushing stuff down, that's where we store a lot of potential energy. I used the example the other day of the spring. A spring sitting on the floor, a 3-foot diameter spring, 3 feet tall, can't do a darn thing until I push on it and lock it down. And then when I release it, if I push down on it 1,000 times, that spring is going to fly, because there's a lot of potential energy in it that will turn back into kinetic energy. When I'm pushing it down, it's called kinetic energy. When I lock it down, it's stored as potential energy. And when I let the lock go, it's now back to kinetic or moving energy. And so when I stuff something away and I stuff it down, I stuff it down, I stuff it down, it's there with a lot of power, which means that literally, energetically, whatever I've stuffed down, I've shared before Marcel Vogel's camera, the Delaware camera, where he could take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. When we stuff something away and put all kinds of potential energy in it, we're setting up a kinetic field, an energy field that radiates from us, literally measurable high energy wave. And the law of resonance means that somebody in tune with that energy wave is going to tend to show up and going to tend to be directed by that energy. So when the scriptures talk about take care of the heart, they're saying look into your unconscious. So yes, you want to ferret out every bit of information that you can. If you look at virtually all of the tools that we teach, a great part of each and every one of them, and sometimes totally the focus is being able to access things that are in the unconscious. So if there are places you can get information and start to tap in, absolutely go for it. And of course, be ready to breathe, have your worksheets handy, and do your work around it. I would suggest a mind shifter specifically geared to that. The one that you selected with the numbers is perfect. And I'd offer a different mind shifter as well, referring to that specific night. And the mind shifter I would use, it is safe and healing, and I give myself permission. It is safe and healing, and I give myself permission to access the thought disorders and events around the panic attack that happened when I was 12. And so I'd suggest, seeing as how this is popping up so much for you, that's probably a mind shifter to spend 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours with. Make sure your phone's off, in your own space. I'm going to take the afternoon, I'm going to work on this issue. Because obviously there are some energetic dynamics behind it that are important for you to resolve. And then, of course, the forgiveness tool, to go back and, who was involved? Do you have any idea what was going on? Can you identify a goal that you held? If you were in panic, it was probably something about safety, or perhaps someone taking care of you, someone being there for you. And so to perhaps do some worksheets around what might have been the goals that you held that night. And or if there's any other time that you had a panic attack since, you might do worksheets on that with an eye toward looking at what's beneath this idea of panic attack. Panic attacks can be really, amazingly significant and debilitating. And all they are is unconscious thought disorders that are activated by certain events. And if I create a whole complex of thought disorders, let's say it's around safety. So the first one is, I'm not safe. And the second one is, the second thought might be, and it might be a power person dynamic where my power person just out of the blue, would come home. I remember working with a woman back, this is, 40 years ago. And let me just get to the details of it. It's been a long time, but it's such a key type of issue. She was about 10, two issues come up. She was about 10, and in working around this issue of attack, she was the oldest of, I don't remember how many children, several children. And Dad was a drunk. And half the time when Dad would come home, Dad would be a mean drunk. Half of the time when Dad came home, Dad was a jolly drunk bearing gifts. Seeing as how she was the oldest one, the younger kids would push her out when Dad was coming home to find out whether they should, head to Dad and get their gifts, or tail it out of the house and hide till he, fell over, unconscious. So she took a lot of beatings that way. So someone coming to the house, a surprise, that was kind of the event. Dad's coming home, and it's like, oh. So worksheets around something like that, if there's any kind of memory. But you look at that, and I remember when I was working with this woman and that situation came up, he had come home, and the cat had messed on the floor, and he told this woman, who at that time was a child of 10, to clean it up, and she made some kind of smart comment, why do I always have to clean up, whatever, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And got to breathe on this. At 10 years of age, she said he beat her so badly that she thought she was going to die. So you take the thought disorders that come from events like that, and if they remain in the unconscious and they remain unresolved, anything that triggers them, literally in that particular case, this woman, and at the time she was probably in her 50s. She'd actually recently stopped drinking alcohol in order to gain more memory back and to clean up her life. But you start looking at the kind of thought disorder complex in the mind that happens to, in that one particular event, and events like that build a whole complex of thoughts. And there's a panic attack. All that has to happen is something needs to happen in the environment, or internally in one's mind, you think about a situation and bang, that whole complex goes into activity. And now you've got, heart racing, or maybe even heart, palpitations, difficulty breathing, throat closes up, total sympathetic dominance, brain blood flow is cut off to the brain, terror. And I mean, people think they're having heart attacks when that sort of thing occurs. And excuse me, but that's the kind of stuff that creates heart attacks. I mean, when you think about the silliness, my heart attacked me. I beg your pardon? That's the ultimate in denial. Excuse me, if you want to tell yourself the truth and there are heart challenges going on like that, what you need to be languaging is, I've been attacking my heart for so long, it's starting to fight back. It's starting to go crazy. I put so much electrical energy, thought, mind energy into that tissue that the electrical functioning of my heart is dysfunctioning. And, I mean, yes, we've got medicine that's figured out some ways to go in and stimulate or even, cut nerves so that impulses aren't there that create disturbances in heart function, when all that needs to happen is somebody needs to work with the thought disorders that are stored in that tissue. So I'd use that mind shifter. I'd take time and allow and really pay attention to the subtlest thoughts that surface from that mind shifter around being 10. Before I did that, I'd go to the mirror and do a love exchange with myself and the commitment. And then I'd do some worksheets around that whole issue. And it would be awesome if you would share the results of that when you get through and on the other side of it. If we can be of any support, we'll be holding the space. And of course, our call-in number, or if you want to talk about it personally, is 563-999-3581. And when somebody calls in, I do ask their name. But if you want to remain anonymous, I'm happy if you give me, Charlie Brown. I don't care. The most important thing is the conversation, the questions, and then the support we can give you. So that would be my take. I'd use every tool in the toolbox and recognize that there's a complex of thought disorders that you need to be undoing, and make the choice to recognize that you're safe to touch into that stuff that, when it happened at 12, you weren't safe, or if it's happened since, coming to a space of safety is an important part in the process as well. The woman that I was sharing with about the cat and her dad being an alcoholic was a drinker. She and her husband, she shared with me, he was a businessman and would work late. He'd come home for dinner late, and she'd have dinner ready, and they'd have 2 or 3 drinks before dinner, and then they'd have a bottle of wine with dinner, and then they'd have 2 or 3 drinks after dinner, and that was a 7-day-a-week affair. They weren't alcoholics, but that was their routine. And so she decided to let go of alcohol, which she did and had done, if I remember correctly. Now, again, it's hazy, it's been a long time, but I think it was probably 5 or 6 years that she had quit drinking, had not touched alcohol at all. And she shared with me in a private session that she'd gone to a party one night the week before, and somebody offered her a drink, and she just said, no, sure, yeah. And so somebody gave her a drink of hard liquor. And since she had cleared out a lot of what she was anesthetizing with alcohol, and she'd done that for years, the anesthetic pain was not what she experienced. What she experienced was the toxic effect of the alcohol. And what she said was that the alcohol no more than got past her lips, like it hadn't been swallowed and it hadn't gotten to her stomach yet, but just taking the alcohol in her mouth, she said it felt like razor blades in my kidneys. So since she'd cleared out the stuff she'd previously used alcohol addictively for, there was nothing to be relieved, so she didn't experience it as relief. She got to directly experience the toxic effect of what the alcohol was doing to her body. And if you're drinking, I'm just going to invite you to consider the tragic physiological, mental, emotional effects of alcohol are just outrageous. You know, the fact that it's even available in the culture to me is bizarre. The fact that it's considered to be normal. Oh yes, of course, we have this special cabinet in our home where we have this fluid that we reserve only for our best friends and for parties when we want to have a really good time. And when special family comes over, we open this cabinet for them. And we share the fluid that's in it with them. Yes, that same fluid, the one that's behind 50% of deaths that happen on the highways every year in America, the one that's behind, that fluid, the one that's behind 3.3 million people in the world dying every year, the one that's behind, I forget the number, 40 to 50% of the rapes and crimes in the culture, that fluid, that's the one we save for our special family and friends, and we want to have a really good time. You might think about it if you think that's normal, and you might really question what you're doing if that's part of it. And I'm speaking from experience. I was brought up in a home where there was alcohol, and it's a normal part of life, and I drank, and I regret that I ever even knew what the stuff was. Now that I understand, I didn't understand. It was just a normal thing. It's a normal part of a culture and social interaction and all of that. It's one of the deadliest things on the planet. One of the most family destructive things that there is. One of the worst marriage wreckers. One of the worst child abuse stimulus there is. And my offering is there's no healthy use of alcohol. Now, I know there's been research done. There's resveratrol in red wines, and it's a component of vitamin C, and it can create some health benefits. But I guarantee you, if you want to use that, you don't go out and buy it in a supplement. Don't drink enough red wine that you get enough of that to get the antioxidant effects of it, because the cost is bizarre and outrageous. So I'll breathe with you, and we'll hold the space for whatever needs to resolve for you. One other story that I'll tell, there was a gentleman that came, and this comes on the tail of alcohol, a gentleman that came to Heartland way back in the first, actually I think he was there the second, maybe for about 5 years he was in and around Heartland. And he had started drinking when he was 15. When he showed up at Heartland, he was in his early 40s, late 30s or early 40s, and he had not had a straight or sober day since he was 15. And when he came to Heartland, he gave alcohol up. He had a deep hate relationship with his father. He could not say a decent word about what an SOB he was and what was wrong with his father, and I'm talking about over a period of years. And I remember one particular StillPoint Breathing session that he did at Heartland, and he was laying on the floor on a mat doing the StillPoint process. And his experience was that he actually energetically felt his energy field, and for him it felt like roots going into the earth, like he became grounded in the actual earth beneath the floor of the heart center. And the first decent memory he had of his father happened after that grounding that he experienced. And he remembered, he was laying on his back breathing on a mat, and he remembered being a child and his dad laying on the floor with him as a little kid and bouncing him up in the air and, playing with him. It was the first decent memory, and that opened a whole flood of memories. And he actually, when we finished that summer, he lived in Ohio, or his parents lived in Ohio. He got in his car and drove right to his parents' home to apologize and clean it up and resolve with his dad, because it was all his own hallucination. His father actually had cancer by that time, and his father and his mother, it wasn't enough that they called me to thank me for the work that he did, but they actually drove to Heartland from Ohio to meet with me personally and say thank you for the change in their son. So, Miss Jeanie, you started to say something, sweetheart.
Yes, we have Julia on the phone, so we can continue with the worksheet.
Awesome, young lady. Welcome.
Hi there, Julia.
How have you been doing since we opened that can of worms for you?
I'm doing well. I felt better actually after listening to the show yesterday. But something that came up, a theme that I kind of noticed, was a theme of guilt in my resonance, right? Because
right.
So like when I was talking about the becoming a Baptist Christian, and there was guilt there, and then the guilt of this Buddhism, it came through again. So, but I was, thinking about, I really am not, I wasn't able to find in myself where because I kind of reject guilt, and but there was something with like my mother that when she conceived me, it was with a man who was married, and he had a 2-month pregnant wife, and so I think maybe that my mother may have had some guilt issues.
Good likelihood.
Yeah.
So do you know that man?
I have met him a couple times, and like I didn't know that was even that I had a different father, because my mother married somebody when she was like a couple months pregnant with me, and so I always knew him as my dad until and I was 9 years old, and we were at a family gathering, and her sister-in-law and my mother and her sister-in-law were having some kind of issue with each other, and she yelled out, "Well, at least my children know who their father is." And so I was in the room and I heard that, and I'm like, "Well, what does that mean, Mom?" And then found out, well, your dad is not your biological father. And so then I got to meet him, and I think my mother was a active alcoholic in that phase of my life when I was that old, at 9, and she quit when I was 14, and so she took me to meet him, but it was kind of like at a party, and so it wasn't a very comfortable, intimate meeting. And then I didn't meet him again until I was 18, and then not again until I was probably in my early 30s, and just a couple times, and then he kind of disappeared again, and I haven't heard from him. So I haven't heard from him for about 28 years. My daughter was 20. My daughter was 2, so like 23 years. I haven't heard anything from him.
No. Well, something that you can do, Julia, and I don't know if you've been on a radio show where we've talked about this, but you can do a worksheet as though you were your mom. around that issue, like do one vicariously for her. And it might be, I don't know what you know about the relationship, whether she thought there was something more to it, whatever. But you can do worksheets as though you were her, for her, and just allow yourself to be guided. Ask her permission internally, or if it's appropriate, even verbally. But and go ahead and let yourself tap into her energy. A way to do that is just to kind of take a few breaths and ask permission to enter her field and tap into that, because you want to do some healing work around it. And, allow the goals intuitively to come to you, and do some worksheets as though you were her. And then at the same time, you can do worksheets as the infant who was the subject of that. What kind of, I don't know if you know, but what kind of turmoil goes on when a woman gets pregnant, loses a relationship with a man that she is intimate with, and then ends up, what kind of turmoil, what kind of trauma goes on. But I can only imagine it might be pretty intense. And so that might be an important key in you processing through this, and opening the space for both him and her to process whatever they need to process, whatever they're carrying from it. Whether they're in their bodies or not doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds
I think
good.
I suspect, and I've never had this thought before, but I suspect, tying it into our conversation about Buddhism and all the deities, I suspect that something like that might be the root truth behind this whole idea of you've got a deity for this and a deity for that and a deity for that, i.e. the fact that you went through that experience and you've gone in and cleaned it up qualifies you to support someone who's been through that kind of experience in their healing process. And in a sense, that would be, I suspect, from what I know, and I don't know a lot about the Buddhist tradition, but I suspect that might be the principle behind, who would become the deity that supports healing this. I know that Catholicism has a similar thing. There's St. Christopher. If you're going to travel, you have a St. Christopher medal in your car, and you pray to St. Christopher. He's like the dude that has traveling handled, and somebody else has marriage handled, and somebody else has suffering handled, and somebody else, because they've done the work in that arena. And I suspect that would be the principle behind maybe some of the Buddhist deities and how that whole idea developed.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So who knows? You may become a deity in your own right.
Yeah. Yeah.
A person who has an energy field that have been cleaned up, something that can create. I mean, it may not have been a really big deal for your mom. I don't know, and I don't know whether you know, but it might have been a major upheaval in her life. And so processing through that would certainly qualify you to be a support person for anyone who's had that kind of an issue in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, she was like 17 years old when that happened. Like, I was born 5 days before her 18th birthday. And, I can imagine that was really intense for her.
That was a pretty tough world back then. I mean, today it's not nearly as big a deal as it was back then. To deal with a teen pregnancy and all the dynamics going on. So I hold the space for you to be able to embrace all of that and to clean that up for your relations.
Yeah.
The Native Americans, when they go into a sweat lodge or a healing ceremony, they have a phrase, and the phrase is Mitakuye Oyasin. And they understood they weren't just doing it for themselves. Whenever they went into that sweat lodge and said the words Mitakuye Oyasin, they were saying, I'm doing this for all my relations. For anybody in the bloodline that has this issue, I'm doing this for their support as well as my own. And of Course in Miracles talks about when you are healed, you are never healed alone. You open an energy window for everybody on the planet who has the same issue, everybody in the bloodline with the same issue to process through those things. So, awesome opportunity, and I get your willingness and your eagerness to do your healing work. So that's pretty sweet, pretty cool.
Yeah. And Buddhists have the same too. Like they always start all their prayers with and their dedication. They dedicate afterwards all the merit, and it's for the sake of all sentient beings.
Right.
So they start it for it, may I become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings, and then they dedicate the merit that they've accumulated by doing the prayers for the sake of all sentient beings. And they're very into the interconnectedness of all beings.
Of all life, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
So breathing with you, where are we at this point?
Well, we are on, I don't know, my worksheet on the left, the numbers got cut off, but we're at A. Let's see, 1, 2,
so
I
it's
think
probably
3A.
3A.
4A. We did my desire, the constructive result, the exact goal that drives my.
So you got your goal. Okay.
Yeah, and then when upset, my perception is built out of corrupt data.
Right. And then you want to step into this. So if you've set the goal, you've identified the goal, then you want to make sure that love is present before you enter into the forgiveness process. So to tap into that strongest, clearest, most powerful love energy that you can becomes the next step.
Yes. And to cancel the goal. Okay.
And so the goal that you settled on in number 3?
I want Gemma to support my new choices. I want the strength to decide. Myself, and I want Gemma to
the strength
release.
To make new choices?
Yes, myself. And it's okay to change my mind.
Yes. So there are 2 different worksheets. So let's stick with one with Gimla. And so 5A, I'm going to bring that goal down from number 3 and then go through number 5A.
My goal was I want Gemma to support your new choices.
Right.
Yeah.
And, there might be a deeper level to that, too. To me, that one would likely be kind of a surface thing, but a deeper one might be, I want Gimla to approve of me, or to accept me, or to embrace me. There might be, 1,000 variations on a theme. I'd look at the deeper levels as well. They'd be additional worksheets to do. I want him to embrace me as a Buddhist with integrity, even though I've changed my mind on this. So they might be some other goals that would tie into cleaning up this whole issue totally.
Yeah.
And who knows whether or not this maybe relates back to what was going on for Mom. Maybe Mom was in a relationship with this man or this boy, because she was just a young girl with this young man or young boy, and became pregnant, and maybe she changed choices and decided to move on from that. And there may be some connectedness there as well. I could easily imagine that might fit in.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
can see that also.
you know, yeah. And what do you suppose? It's just to imagine what was going on for your mom, and this might be another worksheet you might do for her. What do you suppose was going on? She's at this gathering, and sister-in-law is there, and sister-in-law blurts that out in front of everybody. It's like, whew, talk about viciousness on the part of the sister-in-law. And the same, you know, what I would imagine your mom would be wanting from the sister-in-law would be integrity and confidentiality and respect, support. And it sounds like she got quite the opposite of that from her sister-in-law. Pretty brutally vicious.
Yep.
So all of those things would be worksheets you could do that would help to clear the energy in and for yourself, seeing as how you were there at, what would you say it was, 9 years of age?
Yeah.
I'd imagine there'd be some confusion and a whole lot of questions. And boy, talk about a tough conversation to have with your 9-year-old daughter. Wow. Bless your mother's heart.
Yeah.
Breathing with you.
Thank you.
So if you want to go through, you want to read that step 5A. And basically the idea of 5A, it's really a review of the whole first half of the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. It kind of hits all the high points that, you know, perception is made of a max of 9 bits of data, and that it's a goal that drives it. When I cancel the goal, it collapses. When it collapses, it gives me access to the underlying unconscious information that I want to come into conscious relationship with. I want to be able to pull this forward and bring it into awareness. So it's kind of a review of the whole first half of the workshop, and it can be a good thing before actually doing the canceling step to actually read that whole step each time you do a worksheet.
Yeah.
So if you want to go ahead and do that.
Okay. When upset, my perception is built out of corrupt data. Driven by my goal, number 3, it is a limiting picture constructed from a max of 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing. By canceling my goal, my replicate mind's reality collapses and gives me direct contact with the denied and disassociated parts of my carbon-based memory. Dissociated parts of my carbon-based mind, which projects and blames others for its content. While holding love conscious, active, and present, I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly canceling my goal driver for 1C from number 3, Genla, to support my new choices.
And breathe.
And
what's happening?
not any thoughts, just I feel like a release from the breath.
Good. Okay, and then the next step is where I ask Ruka Dakucha, ask the, so to speak, super processor to come in, because who knows if there are genetic components to something like this, how deep the energy goes. Do I have the mental capacity to, one, figure that out or to process it? Highly likely that I don't, but there's a power in me if I invite her. In Aramaic, it's this feminine elemental force, so I'm going to invite that force into activity in me to, and so if you want to go ahead with 5B.
Okay, I invite Luca Dokucha to incline me toward healing, restore me to my newborn essence, love, heal my denial and capacity to generate my emotion of 1B, of guilt.
So I'm willing to literally
decide,
have anything in me that could create guilt to be lifted and released right now, and I'm asking Brooke to do that.
yes. Help me open a direct conscious relationship with and gently remove the denied, disassociated, and projected parts of my carbon-based memory.
And breathe. And just let yourself breathe into that, and then make a note. You know, the next step is I feel. So in 6, how do you feel? Emotionally, physically, mentally. And if you look at the situation, as you wrote about it in number 1, detail how it looks now. Does it look any different? Has your perceptual construct about that circumstance changed?
Yes, it's changed, and I feel better about it. And I think Gemma would understand if he were.
I suspect.
If I would, if I were able to communicate with him. But I don't think he's no longer in his body.
That's okay. You can still communicate with him.
Yeah.
There's no need or reason for that to be restricted.
Yeah.
And you approving of yourself for having changed your mind can be totally and completely independent of what he might think or do. Should he, somehow choose to communicate with you that he still holds disapproval, it's like, okay, I got it, and that's yours. It's not my monkey. I'm not going to carry that one. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I see that I don't know what to write. Where it's 1, number 1. I see that.
Yeah, basically what that step is about is you want to document how your perception shifted. In number 1, Kimberly was the object of attention, whatever. I have guilt, blah, blah. So now in number 6, I'm documenting how I feel about it now and what's going on for me. So I look back and I can see that, maybe I was the one that was limiting or projecting that he'd hold me accountable or think I was guilty or bad or, whatever the circumstance looks like to you now. And, there might be more than one worksheet to do around this issue to get through all of the thought disorders linked to something that important. And that potentially deeply embedded generational pattern.
I see that guilt is a useless emotion.
Yeah, absolutely, 2,000%. It's interesting. Much of churchianity, whatever type it is, has thought they were doing something wonderful if they instilled guilt in a child or a young person, because then the guilt would keep them away from doing that thing. When the exact reverse is true, it's the guilt that becomes the energy that puts the shine on the thing that attracts them to it. If nothing was ever said about it, they wouldn't even pay attention. One example of that I like is in the scriptures. You go back and, you look at the tragedy there is around sexuality in our culture. Like you look at how just crazy churchianity is and people are about their own sexuality and others' sexuality and other sexual choices, blah, 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 blah. You go back and you see these stories in the Old Testament, especially about these, sexually inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. And then you hear, at least God's voice ostensibly coming through those scriptures, and God asks the question, who even told you were naked? Like, who gave you all that crap? It's like, it's really quite hilarious when you look at all the drama and trauma that's been put on it, and God's voice ostensibly comes through the scripture and says, who told you were even naked? Like, that meant anything.
Yeah.
Along the lines of all the drama and trauma and guilt that people do around it.
Yeah.
So.
I don't understand, like, where all this nonsense comes from and why it's perpetuated.
It's called fear. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. And people buy into thought disorders, and out of their thought disorders, remember that the mind has this amazing capacity. It converts thoughts to pictures. So when one holds a thought disorder and their mind generates a picture out of that thought disorder, and they think that they're looking at the picture through their eyes and the picture's out there and that it's real. That's the root of most of the trauma on the planet. When the truth is, you can't see anything with your eyes. Your brain generates literally the picture world that you see. We're not looking through two peepholes at what's going on out there. We're looking at a picture in our brain, and we are pretending that it's out there. But the truth is, it's not. And so dissolving the thought disorders allows the trauma-based pictures to simply dissipate and disappear. It's called healing. It's called forgiveness. By the way, where the word in there, and when I talk about denial, that denial causes dissociation. Which is a psychospiritual term to me. And there's also a psychological term that's disassociation. So we distinguish between those two things. Disassociation is what happens when there's such a trauma-based reality in their minds that they literally disconnect from their own minds and bodies. We've heard stories of someone who says, I can remember when that occurred and I found myself, I was up in the corner of the room looking down at my body and what was going on in the room. Or someone who goes through a near-life experience where they go through clinical death and then they're resuscitated. They'll say, yeah, I was in the corner and I watched the surgeon working on my heart. That's disassociation. What we're talking about with the denial dissociation is that whatever it is that is the real cause behind what my mind is generating is hidden from me internally. It's the creation of an unnatural condition called an unconscious mind through denial. My take is it is not natural for a human being to have an unconscious mind. We're not designed to have an unconscious mind. We're designed to be able to access all information in us at any time by simply turning attention to it and cranking up the resonance of the content of whatever brain cells. But where we've been locked out of that by holding the breath and denial, our definition of now being whenever I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, then in order to believe that lie, that something outside of me could possibly cause something to happen inside of me, I have to hide the real cause of what's happening inside of me. I dissociate from it. And until forgiveness comes along, I have no way to recapture that part of my own mind, that unconscious part. And, or at least I have no consistent, persistent way. I think people sort of, kind of, once in a while, accidentally fall into opening something like that and get to work through something without really understanding the principle behind it. But the only way that I know that people can consistently, persistently clean up those unconscious dynamics is through Yeshua's first century Aramaic work, which is what this worksheet is about. And if you do that, then you'll consistently open up dissociated parts of your mind and heal them. Consistently, 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 until those parts disappear. Those generational patterns especially are disappeared. And then one leaves what in the ancient teachings metaphor was called the desert. It wasn't about being in a hot, sandy place. It was about being unconscious. And they get to move into the promised land, which isn't about some fancy garden somewhere in, in Eden. It's simply to move into the space of conscious co-creation. We are designed to be creators. We are co-creators with the Creator. And as such, we're designed to do that consciously. When we create an unconscious mind, then we do it unconsciously, and that's when we go wondering, why did this come back and bite me in the butt? I didn't know anything about this. Well, yeah, and I've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people. Well, you're just telling yourself that there's something in your unconscious that you need to uncover and clean up, and this is how to do it.
Yeah, thank you for helping
back into
and
full,
figuring this out.
I'll tell you what,
and supporting everybody and doing it.
Yeah, it took me 35 years to understand that piece of information I just gave you. Working full-time with these tools. It, to me, at least for me, was that obscure. And it takes time to build the brain cells to comprehend what it is we're really talking about.
Yeah.
So it's coming into conscious relationship with the dissociated parts of the mind. And when I come into conscious relationship in the presence of love and breath, then those things that are trauma-based simply are evaporated or dissolved or transmuted by the breath, by Rukadikuja. And I wish I had figured it out. Yeshua figured it out 2,000 years ago, or knew it, or however he came to have that information. I just had the blessing and the fortitude to stick to it for 35 years to finally get to where I could comprehend what it was about. And I look back at my life, right back to my early days in school and studying physics and electronics, and how all of that fit so that I had the brain cells when Yeshua came along to go, oh, that's it. Take care of the unconscious. Oh, energy, amplitude. It all ties together. So I feel myself blessed that I fell into that. And I mean, literally in grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12, if I hadn't studied electronics and physics, and that stuff came along, I wouldn't have understood what it meant. If I hadn't done naturopathic medicine, I wouldn't have known that the veil of the temple was the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious. And that when the scripture said God sent out a spirit, it wasn't God sent out a spirit, it was the breath, Rukadikuja, the super processor. I mean, there's only one thing to talk about. I don't care whether you're in the world of psychology or genetics or, history. There's only one thing to talk about. And I think it was, let's see, who was it? Winston Churchill that really pegged it well way back when. And he said, we have the privilege of being separated by a common language. We're all talking about the same thing. It's when you get back down to having the brain cells for the principles behind it that you can go, oh, that's what that means. Oh, there it is. Oh, I see what that, oh, that's how it fits. And all of a sudden, it all comes together. It's a cute story I'm going to finish with, and it's about the woman who had a daughter who was about 4 who was very active and into everything. And one day she saw a map of the world, and she decided to cut out the map of the world and make a puzzle out of it for her daughter. Because her daughter, she knew she'd get busy with it and have fun and stick with it. So she cuts the world up into, this puzzle. She figured, well, that's going to keep her busy for weeks. And about an hour later, her daughter, the little girl, comes back with the puzzle of the world all put together. And her mother's like, Mom, how did you do that? Or the mother says, how did you do that, sweetheart? She says, well, Mom, I noticed when you were cutting out the map of the world, there was a picture of a little girl on the other side. And when I put the little girl together, the whole world came together.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
That's what it takes.
So sweet.
All right, dear heart,
Yeah.
we appreciate you. You have a blessed day.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
All right. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Take care.